Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place.
Hey, Jolie. I've had people from the year of opening come to me and say, and like ask how to find the right people to date, like looking for new partners. They're looking for, so what do I do? How do I find that? And so we end up talking about, what are your wants and needs, and what are you looking for, and what kind of person? And we get into the kinds of person that they're looking for and the qualities they're looking for and all of that, and we can spend quite a while digging into that.
People's wish lists get pretty long.
Yeah, they do.
That's one way to approach it. I'm glad that they have wants. I'm glad you have wants. I think it's good to have a wish list, sort of, but there's actually a really important other piece of the puzzle that needs to be worked on. And if you don't work on this, my experience is you will keep meeting the wrong people. You will keep spending your dating energy on people who feel like, or like on paper, or I guess on our phones, they look like the right person, but they aren't actually a good match for us.
So aside from all your wants and whatnot, what are we talking about? Well,
this is something you and I worked on a lot so you were struggling with dating several years ago, because you kept going on dates that were what I would describe as, like, I could see from the outside that they didn't seem like they'd be good matches, but I'm like, oh, that's yours to have. And what I asked you to work on was, do you know what you're available for?
Available for, yeah, right. Right.
And that was a game changer for me, as a metamor to your people too, because I noticed that and I see this with my clients a lot, and I do it myself. Especially when we're dating through apps, we're looking at what the other person has to offer, and we're weighing that against our wish list. And that sounds okay, but I actually need to know what what else they are that's not written there. Right. Sometimes people will put stuff in their dating profile that's really, really helpful. They'll say something about, like a really, really common one is, I am partnered to someone. They're my ride or die. I'm not looking to change that. That's a way of articulating something about what you're available for. When I read that in a dating profile, I read, I'm basically maintaining monogamy. This is my person. I'm not going to change that. So I'm not available for full on relationship anarchy or polyamory the way that Jolie does it, because I think of polyamory as I'm available to allow relationships to evolve, to potentially have 2 or more people in my life that are all my ride or dies, and figuring out how to deal with that. Right. So I can read between the lines of a lot of people's dating profiles, but it's hard. And on the flip side, and I don't think any of us can put all of this stuff on our dating profile. So I'm not saying you should put everything down. But the thing that has made the biggest difference for me in dating is, can I actually articulate what I am available for? What do I have to offer this person? Because from there, I have the chance to actually be seen and known, and not to accidentally fawn or try to be who they seem to want me to be.
Well, that explains the beginning of my early dating times that you were just talking about. Yeah. Right. Yeah. The fawning and like, this looks like somebody I want, so I will arrange myself to be attractive to them rather than bringing my actual whole self.
And we often don't even realize we're doing that. Right? I remember you coming home from a particular date where I thought you had really finally pulled your britches up about this. You'd gotten a handle on it. You came home from a date. I kind of love this one. Can I tell the Panera story?
That's kind of where I thought you were going.
Or do you want to?
No, you go ahead. You'll remember it better than me.
No, it was great because you had a brilliant moment. You'd gotten a hit on a dating app, and I remember you being like, okay, this person, like, yeah, everything in their description lines up. It seems like we're both practicing a pretty similar form of non-monogamy. They're local to me. I find them, more basically attractive. Like there's an initial ping. The conversation, the chat we've had back and forth is good. And our values seem to align in the ways that, say you can reveal through a dating profile. Yeah. So good enough. Okay, I'm going to go on this date. And you came home from the date and said, okay, so first off, Panera, not a good place for a first date of this sort.
It's not.
Because, and I think this person actually did a great job. I would give them high marks. They were not a good fit for you. You came home and you gave them a full stop, no thank you. It was nice to meet you, because they were very, very clear on what they had to offer. Mm-hmm. And you were clear on what you had to offer. This person was available for sexual connection only, had no interest in having any emotional relationship with you. And if I remember correctly, was interested in having a regular planned meeting, and was talking all about all of this in Panera while you were like, I don't want to have this conversation be our first conversation. You were like, I am available for emotional relationship. I want this to be in a place where we could talk and sink in and get to know whether, I think this was the first time that you claimed a bit of demisexuality. We're like, I no longer felt sexually attracted to her because she was saying she wasn't available to do what I need, which is to make an emotional connection, especially for an ongoing long-term, like, let's have a regular thing. So both of you did great in that case. You made very, very clear what you were available for, which meant you had a 45-minute date and went home.
Right.
Very little time wasted. Nobody's feelings hurt. Just there.
It was very clear.
But prior to that, I had seen you go on dates so this is how I would have, as you were relaying the story of how that date went down, you didn't start with, oh, I'm never going to see this person again. You started just telling me like what she had laid out. And I was like, I was mentally preparing myself for like, oh, okay, he's going to go. He's going to go. He's now got like a regular Wednesday date. Okay. And I was like, I was doing the internal preparations for like, okay, that's definitely going to trigger my jealousy. Yep, got it. Okay, I'm going to have to do this. And that was because I had only ever witnessed you, including with me, try to fulfill the needs list somebody else presented. Mm-hmm. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's my wish list. And I would watch you just like, yep, okay, I can check off all those things, even though you didn't want to.
Right.
So I was psyched for both of you. Probably a bummer because you were both attractive people who could have had a fun thing, but it was a bad fit and you figured it out immediately.
Yeah.
But what was it like for you to not try to fulfill that wish list that she had?
Oh, it felt so tremendously bold at the time to just claim that. I'm hearing you describe it. It's like, I think that's supposed to. I feel like that's the baseline of a good relationship, to show up authentically versus to pander. But I had been pandering so long, it felt like a real departure. And I was going to say I don't know exactly where the boldness came from, but I got to say that conversation would have landed very different in a different atmosphere. Evening, dark,
romantic,
low lighting, romantic.
Yep.
Not a brightly lit Panera at lunchtime. It would have landed very differently in a different circumstance.
Well, that's interesting all in its own, because part of the answer could be what do you need to have in place,
right,
to make sure that you're showing up with your whole self, rather than showing up as a persona who is
trying to fit
trying to do a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing that there was actually so you got an assist from like the little kids kicking the back of your Panera seat and
I
stuff,
did.
right?
Yeah.
It's hard not to fawn,
Hmm.
especially when we are there's a lot of scarcity that we feel. I mean, okay, I'm generalizing. Dating non-monogamously, from the monogamous perspective, like before you open or for any mono person, dating non-monogamously often sounds like, oh my God, okay, so the whole world's your oyster.
Hmm.
My lived experience and many of my clients have said, no, it's actually the opposite. It's you go from, I could date a huge number of people to, oh, actually the pool is small now because I want to date people who align with my
Right.
non-monogamous um, values. And then they still need to fit all the criteria of all the things I actually do want, right? Or at least my bottom lines need to be met. And so now the pool gets smaller and smaller. And yeah, it can be tempting to lean into opportunities that really don't suit you.
Right. So that's really interesting that you bring that up. That polyamorous dating, um, the idea of what am I available for, is in fact built in because at some point you have to decide, particularly out on the apps, am I available to date a monogamous person?
Right.
So the question comes up fairly quickly out looking at the apps. Oh, they're monogamous. Am I available for that? Like that comes up, whatever words you use. Am I going to do that?
Yeah, and especially if they've ticked off like I'm open to either
Right.
monogamous or
Yeah.
non-monogamous, which often means that they're not committed. It's not like a committed set of values. They're open.
Yeah.
So maybe they're an okay person for you to date, but in fact, does that align for you?
Yeah.
My experience has been all of those people who I've dated who were open to either have dated me. I've had a good time with some of them. And then when they found a monogamous partner,
Yeah.
I was no longer able to be part of their life. And at some points in my life, that feels okay. I'm like, yeah, it's just casual dating. It can be fun. The real bummer for me is often those folks aren't able to maintain a friendship
Mm,
afterward.
yeah.
And that comes from that monogamous standard of, nope, that's a person you slept with. So done.
Yeah.
Can't have any connection to them anymore. And I don't mind so much like, oh, I met my person, so I'm going to go settle down into my monogamous life. I can be happy for someone. I can even feel pretty significant compersion for them if that's what they were looking for. But to be cut out of their life really sucks. So for
Yeah.
me,
Right.
I have to remember that I am no longer available to date people who are looking for monogamy because I'm looking to date primarily for deep friendship. Sex is like an added bonus, but I'm looking for really deep, long lasting friendship.
So
That
you would
my
like people to be approaching you knowing whether they're available for deep, long-lasting friendship.
in the face of potential monogamy,
Yep.
especially. And
Mhm.
most people don't even necessarily know whether they can maintain that.
Right.
But if they look at their history, they can uncover it a lot of times. One of the questions you can ask yourself is, do you know what you're available for right now? And does that feel like it's coming from a place of you know yourself and this has been your history, your pattern, or are you actually in a really experimental phase of life and you don't know what you're available for yet? Because I also date a fair number of people, or have dated a fair number of people who are in their first couple of years of non monogamy. And they come out of the gate and they're super excited. And it's fun to date them because they're really excited about all the possibilities out there for them, but they also don't yet know what doesn't work for them
Right.
or for their current partners or what fits into their overall life. And so I don't know what I'm getting. They don't know how to articulate. And some of that's fair. I said I would love for everybody to be able to articulate that. But to some degree, you're going to have to experiment and explore to
Right.
know
To even know. Yeah.
what
Because
you're available for.
the theory of what I want is different from the practice of
Yeah.
getting it, finding it, and then experiencing it. Yeah. So there is, but being able to articulate what you have discovered is useful all by itself. And if you don't, I really like this idea of what am I available for? Because otherwise, as you said, there's the possibility of fawning, of trying to fit yourself in so that you can get in good with this other person. But there's also an observer bias issue where you're only looking at the things you're looking for, and you forget to look at everything else that's there,
Yeah.
some of which may be on what is for you an actual clear no list. But I mean, I have glossed over some things, just like, oh well, I see a bunch of things I really like, I'm gonna go for it. But in fact, the rest of the list included things that I know I'm a no for.
Right. So, just as much as, so if you have a wish list, if you also have a bottom line requirements list,
Hmm.
I think your dating experience will be very, very different.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I
there's the
find people get
fears.
confused about a bottom line requirement, though. Maybe we should
Okay, let's
describe
talk about that.
what this is. So, we talk a lot about needs versus wants. And needs versus wants for me, a need is something that is high level, it is vague, you can meet it in multiple ways, right? Their attachment needs, say, like, I need to feel safe, I need to feel secure, I need to feel that I can trust, I need to feel playfulness, I need to feel autonomy. These are like great big conceptual items. Those are needs. And then my wants, my preferences are, how do I meet those needs? And those wants and preferences are often negotiable with different people different ways. Like, for instance, if I have a need for playfulness, well, if I have you in my life and you are part of my world, and playfulness comes out in, yeah, we do play games together, but mostly it comes out in daily interactions, it comes out in little inside jokes, and it comes out in a lot of sexual play. My best friend, we're platonic. I don't there's no sexual play. She definitely meets my need for playfulness. There's a really deep resonance of playfulness. So, understanding that your wants, your preferences can be met in different ways, then we have our bottom line requirements. And I think Dan Savage first posed this idea of like the price of admission to relate
Mhm.
to someone. And I like that basic idea. I call them bottom line requirements because I like you to kind of think of them as like, I want you to think about, can you hold these? Can you see how this is? These are requirements. This is like a list I want you to know about yourself. These are things that are non negotiable, but they technically fall into the type of thing you would put under a preference. Like, they're not things that somebody else might need. We could all agree that we all need to feel safe to some degree. So it's kind of useless to say, I need to feel safe in my relationship. It's important, but also doesn't actually tell me what you need underneath that. But a bottom line requirement that I have is, I need for people to offer me information about their life without me having to drag it out. And I need them to ask me questions about my life without me having to foist information on them. I need them to want to be an open ended dialogue every single week at the bare minimum, or I can't have an intimate relationship with them. That's a bottom line requirement for me. I have plenty of people in my work who like, nope, don't care about that at all. I don't care if my relationships are mostly silent and quiet. I don't care if, I don't feel safe that way. That's not the thing that helps me feel safe. There are so many ways we could think about bottom line requirements. Do you have any bottom line requirements off the top of your head?
The bottom line requirement pops up for me is there can't be any topics about me that are off limits.
Oh,
I
that's a
don't
good
want
one.
to compartmentalize myself.
So you can't date for the boyfriend experience
No.
because I exist in your life and you have
Yep.
a bunch of children.
Yep. I have children, which some people won't want to talk about. I have you, which some people won't want to talk about. It's like, no, that is me.
But
I
you
don't want.
used to date people who would ask you to compartmentalize. Is that how you learned?
That
And
is how I learned. Yep. It's well, this is all kind of part of the same experience of learning that I got to have a bottom line requirements.
yeah,
Like at the time, I didn't want to have a purely sexual relationship. It's not what I was looking for. So that didn't work. And that is honestly, um, it's really just a facet of not wanting to be compartmentalized.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just have a sexual experience. I wanted to be seen as a whole person.
So our two bottom line requirements they're ours. Other people
Oh
might
yeah.
be like, that's silly.
Yep.
Why would you even
And
have that?
that's
Yeah,
fine.
that's the point. That's
Mhm.
articulating what you're available for and what your bottom line requirements are. And your bottom line, it's not like I walk up to people and I say in our first date, like, hey, you have to do all of these things. It's me using that as a filter for
Right.
as I'm dating someone, the first, say, 3 to 6 dates. I'm looking for not their words about whether they're available to that. I'm looking for their
Right.
actions.
Yeah.
Actually, I will talk to them about my bottom line requirements, but mostly I'm looking for how do we interact? Does this align with that need? Knowing that I've got this bottom line requirement, it's in my gut. Am I going to ignore it because this person's hot? Am I going to ignore it because this person happens to be local and available?
Right. Convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have tended to overlook my bottom line requirements when someone is convenient.
Yep.
People I dated when I was in grad school, yeah, that was 100% convenience. They were available at a time when I had time on my hands in a particular location. I didn't hold any of my bottom line requirements other than my sexual health protocol. That's it. That's the only one I held. Emotionally, all of those relationships, uh, straight garbage for me. Just it did not work for me. That was like in a knowing way, I was like, I'm going to set aside this bottom line requirement in this context. It still had a cost over time. So grad school was, that was like 4 years of heading out to the same area. It wore on me. Like the last year and a half, I wasn't even interested in looking anymore because I wasn't actually developing any quality connections. I was just looking for what's available.
And that's the talking about bottom line requirements and fawning. Like one of the reasons that have fawned in this uh, and not been clear about what I was available for was this sense that if I held myself to what I was available for, if I communicated it, that I was going to completely eradicate my dating pool, that there'd be no one left in it. There was this fear that it can't this can't possibly work. I can't possibly hold my standards and find people.
Yeah, and I actually found that I I had been screwing myself sort of literally um because I wasn't holding my bottom line requirements. Instead, I wasted my time having,
Mm,
yeah, a whole bunch of dates, but never actually connecting with one person who would have been a decent, like, regular long term connection for me. That was silly. That was actually always going to land in my body as like, wait, was the whole thing just about sex? Because I could have done that in lots of ways that didn't need to be. I could have even made it easier.
yeah,
If my bottom line requirement had been, let's say it was completely flipped on its head. I am not available for emotions. My bottom line requirement is that you are available for a non-emotional relationship. We're just going to have sex. And my bottom line requirement is that my relationships last less than 6 months. If I had wanted that, yeah, I could have absolutely approached that dating pool with that and gotten what I wanted. It's about being in alignment with, is what you're setting out to get, is it actually what you say you're going
yeah,
after? But the scarcity thing creeps in for most of us. I think it's hard to imagine. And I find that the fear that we're greedy also shows up.
yeah, right. Mhm.
And the mono mind, I mean, I've had people straight up tell me that they see, polyamory as greedy. Like, no, but I mean, plus we have that whole phrase, have your cake and eat it too, which in fact, I love having two cakes. So, in fact, for my birthday, I usually have at least two
I
cakes.
like having a backup cake.
Backup cake's
Absolutely.
the best. Yeah. Definitely want two cookies. I don't want just one cookie.
One cookie? That's crazy.
The ability to allow yourself to have a bottom line set of requirements is also honoring that you aren't worthless. You have
Yeah.
something to offer here. And so if you can combine what am I available for with what are my bottom line requirements, now we can really get into it. And all of that said, we also need to be open and flexible and allow ourselves to open up that wish list, right? Because so many people, their wish list, when they really get right down to it, their wish list is about, is this person physically attractive to me in two-dimensional space?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
If we can if we can really open our imagination a little bit around that, and then really get comfortable with the fact that, yeah, we may go on fewer dates but higher quality, or fewer dates. I go on a lot of first dates. I don't go on a lot of second dates. I know what my filters are. I know what I'm looking for, and I'm fine going on a first date. Let your first dates be 45 minutes or less. Do the information gathering, get that taste of what do you actually feel like when you're in their space. Coffee's a great first date. A quick walk in my local park, great first date. I have perfect dates, dates that I love. I don't waste those on first dates,
Hmm.
because those set me up to be in a deep romantic context. And like you said, the context can determine how we see this person.
Yeah.
And I want to actually be in my whole authentic self, the self who's thinking beyond just romance or sex. It's the same reason I don't look at, when I go to a sex club or a sex party, I'm not looking at that as my dating pool. I
Yeah.
might wind up dating somebody from there.
But
I
that's
don't
not
see them as
the
my dating pool, because we've all agreed that we're here. There's like a level of casual interaction that's happening. I don't want to assume. But my body's now getting aroused. I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things. So I may not be able to hold on to my bottom line requirements quite the
Yeah.
same way.
So that
So
goes
I
back to what you were saying at the beginning of the conversation about setting yourself up to to support
yeah.
your bottom line requirements, to support those, keeping track of what you're available for while you're on the date, going on the kind of date. And I guess this is one of the things that I can say to the people is like, how do I find the people? Well, you can only filter through apps so far before you just have to go find out what they're like in one-to-one space. In which case, make that one-to-one space one where you can bring your full knowledge of yourself, and it won't slip because of the context, because you're you start drinking, you know,
Yeah,
you lose
I don't
track.
drink on first
That's
dates ever. I don't drink
um
any alcohol on first dates for that exact reason.
or you
My
go
judgment's
to
impaired.
I mean, even like even going to a particularly sexy movie could be a problem. Like, it depends what knocks you off course.
I accidentally married somebody because of that. So yeah. I mean, that our first date was, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's a dicey game.
Yeah.
I don't want to believe that people are intentionally out there fawning, but I think we should all open ourselves up to the idea that when we're dating non-monogamously, there is just like a level of fawning that we tend to engage in. It doesn't. I just want to remind everyone, like, that doesn't mean don't judge yourself too harshly, and also you do want to put your best foot forward, right? So that doesn't mean, the opposite of fawning isn't showing up with crumbs on your shirt. The opposite of
Yeah, right.
fawning
Yeah.
isn't just acting like you, like, whatever. However, I've gone on a lot of first dates where I'm like, oh, this person put no effort in. They're acting like this is just whatever,
Hmm.
right? The opposite of fawning is showing up and actually having this internal sense of, what do I have to offer you?
Yeah.
What am I available for? Does that line up? What are you available for? Asking those questions. Hey, I have these limits. This is what I really need. And maybe you don't share all of this in one date, but having that sense of both the what am I available for and what are my bottom line requirements allows you to show up and really engage fully. And for me, 45 minutes is enough time for me to know whether the person is going to, like, fit well enough into those categories and whether I fit for them. And just as frequently, I am aware, oh, I'm not a fit for them. That's okay. Like, so we meet more people. But as long as we stay trapped in either trying to be what we imagine our dating pool needs us to be,
Yeah.
or having a super specific wish list and requiring that everyone fit into that, we're going to wind up having a less fun experience of dating. And that's not what I would want for anybody.
Right.
Oh, wait, I have one more thing I have to say.
Okay,
I
go
have
ahead and
2
say
pencils out now.
it.
When we're researching, one of the things I always have to remind myself when I'm designing a research study is I can only get the answers to the questions I've asked. When I'm dating, most of the people that I'm dating don't have a plan. Most of them haven't been thinking about this as broadly as I have. So they don't show up with much of a plan. And so knowing that I'm only going to get the answers to the questions that I actually ask makes me think carefully about 2 or 3 questions that I know I want to ask on every first date. Because I want there to be space for the whatever, the magic to happen.
Yeah.
But there are also a couple of things that, like, oh, those questions really help me like get to know a person the way I need to. I just want to encourage everyone to really to experiment and hone your couple of questions.
Yeah.
I'm
And
not going to say what my questions are now because I've gone on now just in the last couple of years, a dozen dates with people who have heard my podcast before they date me.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not giving you guys the answers. I'm not doing it. Not happening. But knowing what your clear questions are that help you get to know that person in a particular way, that help you reveal that information.
Yeah.
It's not a game. That's actually you being thoughtful about
Right.
what would help them. They don't necessarily know what you need to know. So can you make a plan?
Yeah.
And just having like a couple, not a zillion, not a laundry list, a couple
And
questions.
I liked what you said about experimenting. So on the one hand, this requires self-reflection ahead of time to know, what do you care about? What are you looking for? The whole point of this, like, what am I available for? What scenario would work for me? And then from that, figuring out your questions. But you're most likely going to have to go have the conversations, get some answers, have your experience, and find out whether those questions worked for you.
Absolutely.
Right?
My questions came
This is an
from
experimental process.
dozens and dozens of dates.
Yeah.
It's
So
not
don't be
necessarily the most
surprised, I
fun.
guess.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. And my questions wouldn't actually help any of you.
Right.
They're
No,
mine. They
tailored for
help
you.
me understand what
They wouldn't
I
work
need
for
to
me.
know. Yeah. I mean, you don't even know what my questions are because they've
That's right.
changed since we were dating. So I also just want to say that if dating is feeling frustrating to you, like, I often need a boost, a reminder that it's worth dating because it can get discouraging at times. It's okay to take a break and then decide to get back at it. I'm about to head into first date season again. I tend to wait till spring, and yeah, it's okay to take a break and just kind of relax a little bit if it hasn't been going well. But when you come back or when you start dating, if you can, think about when you're saying, what am I available for? Try not to make that list be a bunch of things you're not available for.
Yeah.
I see many people, I get a lot of my clients who their list is all the stuff they're not available to do, not the things that they actually have on offer.
I didn't know this was how this conversation was going to land, but I find myself inspired to do the experimentation, to go date. Like, it sounds
Yay!
fun. I thought, I don't know. I don't know how this lands for our listeners, but this sounds like fun. Like, oh, that I can do. And
It's
I guess
very
the reason it
different.
sounds more fun than what I have been doing is because there's always been this element of fawning and trying to figure out, what's the game? How do I do? No. If I come in with my own point of view of who I am and what I'm looking for and what I'm available for,
Yeah.
then I can just explore. And that sounds a lot more fun.
This is why I come home from dates happier than you do.
Right. Yeah.
Totally
Yeah.
is.
No, I was just pretending to be somebody else the whole time.
Honestly, I've had some horrifying dates. I had a date where I had to tip a waitress. I landed a waitress a huge tip because I could not get this guy to leave me alone. And I asked her to walk me to my car. Like, I've had some bad first dates. Um, it's I
Yeah. It can be fun is
but it
what
can
I'm
still
seeing.
be really fun.
Interesting.
Really,
Oh,
really fun.
this might give me some a new perspective on dating. So thank
Yeah.
you.
And your bottom line requirements, they're yours.
Yep.
They don't have to be reasonable.
They don't
It's
have to make
why we
sense to
actually want them
anyone.
to be kind of out front. You want to know them up front because they don't have to be reasonable. But when you make your availability, your actual availability, and your bottom line requirements, if you make them visible to yourself, it's going to be easier to interact with all the people around you.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yay.
Well,
Okay.
thank
So
you.
great. I hope you have a really good first date season.
And happy first date season to all of us.
We talk to you all the time. It is absolutely imperative to me that we get to hear from you as well.
Yes, please.
So, we'd love to invite you to join us. Join Ken and I. We're holding monthly Ask Me Anythings. You can show up, bring your questions from podcast episodes, from your relationships, bring questions about non monogamy, about individuation, about relationship skills. We would love to share space with you. We're hosting these AMAs free of charge for our podcast listeners. You are the Playing with Fire community, and it matters a ton to us that we connect with you directly. So
Oh,
go,
I would so love to hear your questions and it'd be so awesome.
yeah. Go to joliehamilton.com/AMA and you'll find a way to sign up real quick and get an invitation to join us in a small group where we're going to get together and talk about all things non monogamy, individuation, and relationships.